My name is Sister Cabrini Smits. That's Schmitz. I was born Sunday, March 6, 1932, in Scranton, Arkansas, the second child and the first girl of Tony and Bertha Smits. They named me Hilda, a name I thought was not the name of a saint until I was in the 8th grade, and the pastor in Paris, Arkansas, where we had moved when I was 11 years old, asked each of us students to say something about our patron saint. I said my name was not that of a saint, and I didn't know where my mother got that name. Because my mother had been a Lutheran, I supposed it was a Protestant name. Father Edward Chrisman, a Benedictine monk from Subiaco, informed me that Hilda was a great Benedictine saint who had been abbess over a double monastery at Whitby, England, one monastery for men and one for women. I grew up in a large and very religious family. We were 7 boys and 3 girls at the time I entered the convent. We had morning prayer at the breakfast table and evening prayer at the supper table. We prayed the Angelus before each of the 3 meals. During May and October, we said the rosary every night. We children would go to daily mass during the summer months when we were out of school. As we walked to church, I would search cloud formations to see if I could find a meaningful picture. I remember one of the special cloud pictures was of Jesus sitting on the corner of a table with the apostles around him listening intently. It was a beautiful discovery. I don't remember when I first received the call to become a Benedictine sister. It was a gradual recognition, I suppose. I or my parents must have thought of it very early in my life because my parents gave me a sister doll for Christmas about the time I was 6 years old. In our German Catholic culture of the 1930s, priests and sisters were highly respected, and in our house we were not allowed to say anything negative about them. What father or sister had said was the gospel truth. I treasured that doll for a number of years, and after I entered the convent in the fall of my senior year, I gave the doll to my niece, Tressa. Years later, when Tressa was grown and gone from home, her mother returned the doll to me here at the convent. Evidently Tressa had played with it a lot. It was quite tattered. Sister Vivian Lewitt, one of our sisters who had dressed other sister dolls before, agreed to repair it. It is now displayed among the artifacts of monastery history. The sisters from St. Scholastica Monastery in Fort Smith, who were stationed in Scranton, Arkansas in the mid-1930s, were very kind to our family during the Great Depression. My father, who had had a job working on the railroad, lifted something that was too heavy for him and injured his back. He was in much pain and unable to work for 2 years. At various times he was hospitalized at St. Edward Hospital in downtown Fort Smith, in St. Mary's Hospital in Russellville, and even was sent to Hot Springs for the mineral baths. Nothing seemed to help. All his life he suffered from what he called his rheumatism. Of course, his inability to work meant there was no money to buy food or anything else. The sisters and the pastor and many parishioners were especially kind to our family during those difficult years. I don't recall details of that kindness, but I was impressed with the sisters' compassion and kindness to us children. Perhaps that was the beginning of the call. Actually, I had a secret desire to be like the sisters in action and to dress like them. I also wanted to become a teacher just like Sister Jean Hyman, my first-grade teacher. When my older brother Lawrence started in first grade, he would bring home his school books. There was only one book for each subject back in those days. Our mother would go over his math, his spelling, and reading with him each night. I listened very carefully and learned those first-grade subjects along with him. I was so eager to go to school that my mother took me to see Father Richard Eveld, our pastor in Scranton, so I could ask him for permission to start first grade, even though I was only 5 and wouldn't be 6 until the next March. He extracted a promise from me that I would study hard. I've been doing that all my life, it seems. I loved school and my teacher, Sister Jean, a young nun at the time, who taught me for the first 3 grades. In Scranton we had 4 grades to a room, one called the Little Room, actually this was on the stage, and the Big Room, which was the auditorium. One of my favorite books was the Bible history we studied. During this summer I would read and reread those stories, since we didn't have access to a library to check out interesting material. My parents did have a subscription to the Sacred Heart Messenger. I read and reread those stories, especially the ones that had some romance in them. When we kids would play school or church, I would be the sister teacher and my three brothers would be the students. Mom let me use some old window curtains to make my veil so I'd look like an authentic sister. I played the sister's part with a discipline aspect when my two younger brothers would misbehave in our play church. One of my brothers would be the priest, and I was always the sister. We also played house, and one of my brothers was the daddy, and I was the mama, and the other boys were our kids. We didn't have a movie theater in Scranton, but we did when we moved to Paris when I was 11. So, yes, we played the movie stars then, too. All through my grade school days, my teachers would suggest that I think about being a sister when I grew up. My mother, too, would say she hoped one of her 3 daughters would become a sister. I didn't say aloud anything in response, but in my heart I'd say, it won't be this one. I had a wonderful 8th grade teacher, Sister Norbert Holting. She was the first sister I didn't resent for saying I'd make a good sister. Sister Norbert had written our 8th grade prophecy. She put me in the convent and gave me the name Sister Lawrence. However, when my brothers took me to Fort Smith to attend high school in St. Scholastica Academy there, 2 of my grade school teachers accompanied me from the car to the south entrance. At the time, these 2 sisters seemed very tall. Over my head, one said to the other, "We'll have her in black and white," that was the colors of the sisters' habits in those mid-1940s, "before she leaves here." I could feel the anger rising in my heart, but I said nothing. What I was thinking was, I'm going to deliberately make low grades in my freshman year, but I just couldn't carry through on that. As with many other young girls in the academy, I was on a work scholarship for tuition and room and board. That freshman year, my assignment was to clean the classroom where English grammar and literature were taught. Invariably, my English teacher would pass by the door, and seeing me work there, she'd come in and say again, "You would make a good sister." I resented the remark, but with the respect we were taught for priests and sisters, I said nothing. However, when she'd leave, I'd pray aloud, "God, get that woman off my back." Reflecting on my vocation story, the thought struck me that I engaged in some very contradictory behaviors. For example, when my parents said they hoped one of their 3 daughters would become a sister, did my inmost heart say, "Not me"? And yet I would wear a sister-teacher headdress made from old curtains and play school or church with my siblings. Why, when I arrived at St. Scholastica Academy as a boarding student, and 2 of my grade school teachers said, "We'll have her in black and white before she leaves," did I become angry, and yet persist in saying the confirmation prayer the bishop gave us, "Lord, help me to know what you want me to be"? It seems now that God surely was doing God's best trying to get my attention. Again, why did I protest interiorly when another sister told me I'd make a good sister, and yet I joined the Academy Vocation Committee? I suppose I'd have to admit that God finally got my attention in November of my senior year in the academy. A group of us students were playing basketball in the gym. Sister Norbert, one of our prefects or house mothers at the time, came to the gym and called me aside to tell me that my novice cousin, Sister Audrey Becker, wanted to see me in the music room on the 3rd floor. Suspecting that my cousin wanted to talk about vocations, I told Sister Norbert that I didn't want to see her. Sister Norbert said, "Go to the dorm and change from those jeans into a skirt, and go see your cousin." Quite reluctantly I went. When I opened the music room door, the first words out of my mouth were, "Who sent you?" She denied anyone had. She said that my mother had told her mother that I might enter the convent after graduation. "So why don't you enter now?" she asked. I told her I wanted to graduate with my class on the stage next spring. "Besides," I said angrily, "I want my own tube of toothpaste, my own shoe polish, and other things." She said she had her own things. I don't remember what other protests I offered, but I left the room saying to her, "Well, I'll think about it." I didn't sleep too well that night. The question, "Why not enter now?" demanded a response. As I pondered that possibility, I felt rather euphoric, and the thought surfaced over and over, "Well, why not? Yes, I'll do it." My heart was filled with a great peace and joy as I planned the next move. The next day I spoke with Sister Benita Weavers, another prefect, and told her what I wanted to do, but I wanted it to be kept a secret. She put me in touch with the novice director, who gave me a list of items I would need to bring. She arranged for me to see the monastery seamstress to get measured for a postulant's habit. That was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I planned to enter Saturday after Thanksgiving. That Sunday, after my secret decision, my father and my oldest brother drove up from Paris to visit me in the academy. I told them what my plan was, and I gave Dad the list of items I would need to bring with me when I entered and asked him to ask Mom to start gathering those items. When I arrived home the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I asked Mom if she had some of the things collected. She said no, because I wasn't sure you'd really do it. Well, the Friday after Thanksgiving, Dad, Mom, and I went downtown to purchase some things, including a footlocker, in which to put all the things I was to bring with me. The Saturday after Thanksgiving, Dad and Mom drove me to Fort Smith to enter the convent. It was quite a shock to my classmates that I made such a move. However, it was very hard for me to leave my brothers and sisters, especially the very young ones. How did I know this was a good decision? My heart told me. Joy filled my heart. I was very happy that I had made such a life decision as this so quickly. I had no idea that such a wonderful life lay ahead of me. In the convent I was given so many opportunities to develop my God-given talents and to use them in various positions of responsibility and leadership in the community of St. Scholastica Monastery. I was also stretched by some assignments for which I didn't think I had the skills. However, the community leaders believed in me, so in obedience, I accepted the assignment and developed new, lasting skills. I was sent to Incarnate Word College in San Antonio, Texas, for my bachelor's degree in English from 1958 to 60, then to Notre Dame the summer of 1960 to take some classes in journalism, to Marquette University in Milwaukee to get a master's degree in secondary school administration and supervision. I also had a year at Aquinas Institute, then located in Dubuque, Iowa, now in St. Louis. My monastic assignments began in 1951 with teaching the primary and elementary grades 6 years, then high school from 60 to 68 in our academy, and from 1968 to 73 at St. Anne's High School, both of these in Fort Smith. After that, I did a clinical pastoral education program at Hillcrest Medical Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then was hired to work in pastoral care at St. Edward Mercy Medical Center here in Fort Smith for 2 years. I took a leave of absence from there to work within our community on the corporate reflection team of 4 of us. After a year and a half of that, I returned to St. Edward in 1982 and was asked by the CEO to move into administration. In 1990, the prioress, Sister Louise Sharam, assigned me to be the director of St. Scholastica Center, our former academy, which included Trinity Junior High leasing space, Project Compassion offices, a spirituality or retreat center, and space for several other small organizations. I did that for 10 years until I was elected the prioress in 2001. I served 2 4-year terms as prioress. I've had a full and rich life as a Benedictine sister. I'm very grateful to the community and to my very supportive family. Did I ever have second thoughts about being part of monastic life? Yes, especially during the turmoil following Vatican II in the late 1960s. Many of my friends left the convent and returned to lay life. I struggled with the thought that maybe I should also leave. One afternoon as I was crossing the yard to go to evening prayer, a line from one of the Psalms came to mind. It said, "Put not your trust in princes, in whom there is no salvation." I understood that if I would leave the monastery it would be just because my friends did. I knew deep within my heart that I wanted to be a Benedictine sister, and that's the choice I made, a choice I've never regretted. I renew my commitment daily. To anyone entertaining the slightest thought that God may be calling you to religious life, I would encourage you to go with your heart's desire. Check it out. Visit websites for virtual tours of monasteries and convents. If some appeal to you, call or write for further information. Then make arrangements to visit several times for a few days. Notice if the sisters seem happy to be in the monastery. Of course, pray daily that you make a good choice, one pleasing both to you and to God. If anyone suggests that you would make a good sister, listen to them. God often works through people who know and love you. I know that's how God worked in my life these many years. I will be happy to celebrate being a sister for 60 years in 2011.